First things first, is CP3 a lock for his first trip to the finals? And what about the Clippers? Is Paul George to blame for their 3-1 deficit? Kawhi Leonard looking like he's now going to miss Game 5. Is his future with LA on the line tonight? Good Monday morning, everyone. Welcome to First Things First. Look at Kawhi just having a blast, or he's fired up, or he's both, or he's neither. Whoever knows with Kawhi. Jenna Wolfe and Nick Wright and Brandon Marshall and Kevin Wilds. Is it time to talk Clippers' demise, Nick? Are we at that point?
Well, we will be here in a few days. It was a gallant effort. Brandon's, his teams are as dead as my teams now. All our finals picks out in the wilderness as we get ready for Suns-Bucks. Suns-Bucks is what we're going to get.
Right. All right, we'll talk all that Clippers in a second. But let's start out east, the conference finals. Game 3 last night. Hey, the Bucks blew out the Hawks Friday in Game 2. How would Atlanta respond? Out of the gate strong. Not strong enough, though. Not when Giannis is giving you 33. Not when Chris Middleton is adding 38. But how about this? Chris Middleton outscored the entire Hawks team in the fourth quarter with his 20 points alone. Giannis calling his night absolutely unreal. Brandon calls it ridiculous. Bucks win. They take a 2-1 series lead. But for the Hawks, a little injury to insult. Trae Young spraining his ankle in the third quarter when he inadvertently stepped on an official's foot. He'll have an MRI today, but it clearly bothered him last night. Take a listen.
It's sore right now. It's hurting. It's frustrating. Yeah, I mean, it's hurting a little bit, and it's sore. I got some treatment on it. I'm gonna go get some more in the morning. Yeah, I mean, that's all I can do right now is to get treatment. And then, yeah, when I came back in, it was just kind of sore, and I made me mad. I couldn't really go as fast as I wanted to, and then when I did, it hurt. So. Just gotta get treatment, and hopefully it feels better for next game.
All right, definitely something to watch there. Nick, what's the bigger storyline here? The Bucks back-to-back wins or Trae's ankle injury?
Listen, I believe the bigger story is the Bucks back-to-back wins. The Hawks should feel great about their season. They should feel even better about the potential for next season when Bogey will be healthy, DeAndre Hunter will be healthy, Cam Reddish will be healthy. They're doing this down two of their major rotation pieces in Reddish and Hunter, and Bogdanović, obviously, in this series has not been right, never more evident than last night with Trae Young taking another leap, or a leap to another level, I should say. But the story to me, Brandon, is the Bucks. And I think we have to start recognizing we have seen the Bucks model before, and it resulted in one of the best dynasties in league history. Now, they are a worse version than this model at almost every level, particularly on the coaching level. But the model is the Shaq, Kobe Lakers. You've got a superstar who is a guaranteed 30 and 10 in every single playoff game, essentially. You have a second option who is clearly the second best guy on the team, which Kobe was during that championship run, but who becomes the number one option in the fourth quarter, and Giannis knows as much and admitted as much last night. You have a point guard who's incredibly important to what you do, but you can't really rely on him enormously on the offensive side, and a team that is essentially unbeatable if the role players are knocking down threes. That model carried the Lakers to 3 straight championships where they were really only ever tested a couple times, once by Portland, once by Sacramento. Now, I'm not predicting that, Brandon, for these Bucks, because as great as Giannis is, he's about 92% of what Shaq was. And as excellent as Chris Middleton is, he's about 60% of what entering his prime Kobe Bryant was. But I think it might be good enough for one title. And it might be good enough to get them on the very, very short list for title favorites next season. So to me, the story is the Bucks realizing who they are, Giannis becoming the fully realized version of himself, and Middleton taking him home when they need it.
No, I'm with you on that, Nick. I mean, last night watching this game, you know, I was thinking about where's my stance on this team? Where do I stand when it comes to Giannis? I feel at times wishy-washy. The dude is phenomenal. I mean, 30 points, 10 points. He makes it look easy. But the free throws, not being able to develop a shot from three, only having one or two moves on the offensive side, it just brings too much gray to the conversation around the Bucks and also around Giannis. And that was what I was thinking about last night. But look at this, you know, when we look at this question, we're talking about, you know, what was the bigger storyline? I got to go with the Bucks. You know, Trae Young was phenomenal last night again. When he went down, there was 40 seconds left in the third quarter. When he rolled his ankle, they were up by 3 points. And you know, he was doing good. But here's the situation is that the Bucks were rolling. They came back from the first quarter deficit. I mean, double digit, down 17 points, I believe, second quarter. They were able to cut that in half almost. And then the third quarter, before Trae went down, they were down by 3. But Chris Middleton was rolling. He was in his bag last night, Wilds. Chris Middleton, you know, showed up on the road. He hasn't done that in the past consistently. So for him to go to Atlanta in a rowdy crowd and show up alongside of Greek the Freak, who's going to give you an easy 30-10, that was the bigger story for me. But you got to acknowledge that the Hawks were rolling early, and Trae Young, this emerging superstar, was balling before he went down.
Yeah, look, Giannis was amazing, and that dunk that he has on Lou Williams on the breakaway, you can see Lou just kind of be totally deflated, and I think that was the most demoralizing, sort of just gimme 2 points of the entire series. Nick, but to your point, that's the nice, I'm glad we're starting Monday on a very nice note, because the nicest thing you've ever said is that Chris Middleton is 60% of Kobe. I'm taking the under by a large margin. Here's the thing about Kobe. He's going to show up. And I don't know if Chris Middleton is. And I've been here for the last 2 weeks, like, you know, once the Bucks start being able to shoot, they're going to be unstoppable. And it finally hit. Like in the broadcast, it's like Middleton, it's hitting again. I got so happy. Here's this fact that you need to know. When Chris Middleton hits 40% of his shots, the Bucks are undefeated in the playoffs. Oh, but Wilds, they haven't been undefeated. Yeah, I know, because sometimes Chris Middleton doesn't show up. And we talk about a real 1-2 punch. Middleton just needs to be more consistent. I'm happy that he rattled off 20 points in a quarter, Nick, but I would prefer just a steady drumbeat of production from him rather than him just going missing for large swashes and having Giannis just have to carry the load.
Yeah, so listen, I am not trying to make a Chris Middleton Kobe comp in full, but what I would suggest anyone in the audience that had the reaction that you had to what I said is go look at Kobe's playoff games, that first championship run. Kobe was their second best player, but he was not an easy 30. He was not even a guaranteed 25 every single night. Now, by their second championship, he was great far more often than he wasn't. And by their third championship, he had the argument that, you know what, I am the second best player in the league, only to Shaquille O'Neal. But that first title, the way they got there was they knew every game they could rely on Shaq. And at the end of close games, Shaq didn't have to take over. And I just want to show these two Giannis things. One's a stat, one's a quote, because I think they both speak to what I'm talking about. The stat is the guys that have been a guaranteed 30 and 10. Kareem, Hakeem, Shaq, Giannis. All three of those guys, by the way, won the title that year. If we go pre-merger, you had Elgin, Pettit, and Wilt. So it's all-timers. But as good as that is, I think this quote here from Giannis after the game is better. I want to be a winner. I have the whole game to be the guy. I don't care about being the guy in the fourth quarter. I trust Chris to death. If Chris asks for the ball, better give him the ball. And Jenna, when you take this quote, you add to it if people saw the video of Giannis with PJ Tucker at practice saying, I can airball 2 free throws. Don't care. Gonna keep coming down. Dunk on you the next time. I think Giannis mentally, and this is a point Brandon harps on across all sports, and it's important, Giannis mentally is in such a healthy place right now where he's not worried about what people say about him, and he's not worried about who's getting the credit. To have your superstar in that mindset is so valuable, and I think it was on full display last night, because some guys would have said, even when Chris was cooking, all right, I need some touches, guys. I'm the MVP on this team. I was like, Chris, take it, buddy. Take us home, and that might help carry them to a championship.
All right, Bucks with the win. They now have a 2-1 series lead over Atlanta, but Atlanta has to watch out with Trae Young's ankle there. Much more on that still to come. We got to switch some gears. We're going to head out west. You might be surprised about something DeAndre Ayton had to say. This is First Things First on a Monday morning. Time for a little drawing a blank. The Phoenix Suns now just a game away, by the way, I'm back, from a trip to the NBA Finals, in case you didn't know. That after a big Game 4 win over the Clippers Saturday night. Suns can thank their big trio of CP3, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton for that win. Ayton, by the way, asked after the game about his star point guard. Take a listen.
I love CP, man. Like I said, that's really the only teammate that really pushed me, like big bro type push, knowing what I got and that I never thought that I had. I think he was the best thing that happened to my career. You know, I can say that every day. You know, just C is really a dude who pays attention to detail. It's not how he said, it's what he's saying. You know, I think most people don't get. You know, it's just a message for real, and he cares so much. It's actually crazy. I never know a guy that, you know, care so much about basketball and compete at everything. And, you know, it's contagious, and, you know, that's what it built in me as well. And, you know, just having him as a teammate and the experiences that he's went through and teaching me the little things has helped me, man, and it's working.
All that love for CP3, said the man who's wearing Devin Booker on his shirt. All right, Brandon, Ayton's comments on Chris Paul are blank.
Yeah, I didn't think you was going to acknowledge that shirt, Jenna. Like, I mean, that's the most important part of this whole discussion. That was genius. I absolutely loved it. Hopefully they monetized it and sold a couple tees to the public. But anyways, I had Fitzmagic and DeAndre Ayton has Chris Magic. That's what this is. The relationship between a quarterback and wide receiver is similar to the relationship of a point guard and a center. If you don't have your guy that can get you the ball and get you in the right spots, then it doesn't matter how good you are. So that's what this is to me. Also, last night, or watching this game, 2 nights ago, watching these games and just watching this team, I'm like, why would CP3 leave? I know this isn't the question, but that was on the top of my mind. Was a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the Knicks potentially offering a 3-year deal with a lot of money, but why would he even consider leaving? This is true impact. When you have your teammates talking about you this way and you step into an organization, a locker room, and totally transform the culture and actually take a team from never being haven't been in the playoffs in 10 years to being in the playoffs, you don't leave. So this is a big story, and absolutely love how Ayton's giving him his flowers.
Well, there is
all right, before I give my answer, and Wilds, don't give your answer, but let Wilds take over. Wilds called an in-game timeout. I heard him. So, Wilds, do what you need to do here, then come back to me, please. Go ahead, Wilds.
Okay, here's the thing, a world. Just because you're able to turn a clever phrase doesn't make it true. So Chris Magic does roll off the tongue. But all-time great Chris Paul is not Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's just not. He's not. And the fact that you tried to slide that into the show, like, you know, DeAndre Ayton's got a first-ballot Hall of Famer, one of the, maybe, you can argue,
don't invalidate my feelings.
Ever. And you're like, you know why I had Ryan Fitzmagic? It's just, I don't invalidate my feelings.
Have you learned anything about communication? You have to validate the other first. Do not invalidate my feelings towards Fitzmagic.
I'm sorry, then you're right. I take it all back.
Communication, Wild.
I take it back.
The first rule.
Right. I take it back.
All right. Now, moving past the Ryan Fitzpatrick part of this, I got 3 points. The first one is, I encourage anyone who's having a hard or stressful day, look up some DeAndre Ayton sound bites. He is one of the most wholesome, just kind, good-natured stars we have in this league. Every interview with him, he seems just like a big kid. I love it. That's first of all. Second of all, I think Chris Paul has finally found the right generation to play with. So, like, in his history,
right.
Chris Paul, amazingly effective, not really a beloved teammate. Because it was guys his age or older than him early on that he was barking at, yelling at. Because he's so smart and sees the game at such a high level that he's rubbed guys the wrong way. Teams over the Blake. Blake's like, I was already here. And now you're telling me what to do. DeAndre Jordan's like, you're a foot shorter than me and always screaming at me. Like, but now it's guys who grew up looking up to him. So I think that works. My answer, however, is this is 6 weeks too late. Hey, DeAndre Ayton, you know when I would have liked to hear this? When that MVP voting was still going on. When you could have helped me out and helped him out and said, hey, you know who's the MVP? This guy who's taught me everything. This guy who's taken my game to a new level. Where was this when the votes were still to be cast? Wild, you were saying this is what we needed, and now we're getting it a month and a half after the votes have been cast. That's frustrating,
Right.
Wilds. All the rest of it I love.
So, obviously, I love Chris Paul, and this is why he should have been MVP. I would say, I'll go back to the beginning of the story, though. I think he needs a new shirt. You can't be complimenting Chris Paul by wearing a Devin Booker shirt.
That's what
and
I
just
said.
for a little insight into everyone's personality, I got an extra role there, too, I'm going to throw to. Just as an insight into everyone else's personality here. Well, I think all of us were like, oh, that's a cool shirt. Brandon is the only one with like a full-on, like multiple side businesses. Brandon was like, yeah, it was a cool shirt. I hope you monetize that. So great job, Brandon. Hope you monetize that. That was a great
That's
job.
all I think about.
Monetize
Monetize
everything.
everything.
Image is not copyrighted.
Hope you monetize
Our great
that.
ROI.
Monetized everything.
Monetize it. Monetize it.
All right, let's switch gears. Time for Wild's Weird and Wonderful from the national pastime. Clayton Kershaw. What a night from him. 13 strikeouts
Here we go,
in a
baby.
7-1 win over the Cubs. K's for days for Clayton Kershaw, but not weird or wonderful enough. Kevin Wilds, what do you got?
Oh, we'll start Friday in the Mexican Baseball League, the Mariachis versus the Railroaders. No more Valdez at the plate. Ball goes to the shortstop, brings it home, and it looks like Harris is out here. He is not. He is called save the catch. He's like, what? I tagged him. He's like, nope, sorry, you didn't. The play was reviewed and upheld. The Mariachis end up scoring 7 runs that inning to win the game. Moving on to the wonderful Pirates-Cardinals. Yadi Molina with a shot to third base.
Slow motion.
Brian Hayes with the throw of the year from the dugout. Out.
Whoa.
Now look, great play. Let's be honest, Yadi Molina, you do you're on this segment a lot for your awesome stuff. You got to be one step faster, just one step faster. You would have got it. And then finally, the weird Angels-Rays top 3. Fletcher hits a pop-up fielded by second baseman Brandon Lau, who makes a terrible throw to Nowheresville, just kind of in between third and home. All right, seems like a broken play. Or was it? Or was it just a savvy strategy? Yarborough gets the ball, throws it home.
Fitzmagic would never make a throw like that.
Fitzmagic would never. That did look like a Fitzmagic throw. Ends up being out.
That's exactly what it
to
was.
the Angels, and that's the weird and the wonderful.
That's exactly what it was. It was Fitzmagic. Back to the NBA. Is the Western Conference Finals as good as over? First things first on a Monday morning. Back here talking Suns Clippers from Saturday. Oh, this one wasn't pretty. Unless, of course, you're a Suns fan. And then it was raindrops and unicorns. Suns led wire to wire, getting the win and the seemingly commanding 3-1 series lead, though never count the Clippers out this postseason. Unicorns are beautiful. Clippers still without Kawhi, who isn't even expected to travel to Phoenix for Game 5 tonight, much less suit up. So, Brandon, start with you. Is it safe to say this series is over?
Yeah, it's over, Jenna. And while we're starting with me, let's go back to my picks. I picked the Clippers to make it out of the West and the Nets to make it out of the East, but I hedged my bet. Halfway through the year, I hedged my bet, guys. I said the Suns are a real team. And on this show, you and Chris, everybody said, we can't talk about the Suns on this team. So it doesn't matter if it's over. For me personally, I still will be fine because the Suns are in good position, all right? So I just want to put that out there first. But it's too much for Paul George. Now, if we had Kawhi Leonard, if he was playing, then they would probably win this series when you look at how competitive these games have been. Now, the Suns have been in total control. These games have been closer than what the this 3-1 series lead looks like. Even a couple nights ago, there was 4 times in the fourth quarter where they were within 1 point, but they just didn't have enough to overcome just Paul George. CP3, Ayton, and also Booker. Those 3 guys combined for damn near 70 points. So it's just too much for those guys without Kawhi Leonard. They don't have enough in the tank, Nick. So when you look at this moving forward, I see this as a game where Chris Paul potentially makes a statement. This is a guy who hasn't been able to get over the hump in the playoffs, and now you're in an elimination game, you're in a closeout game. Now you're probably going to go out there and drop 35, 40 points and make that statement because he's a guy that can easily turn it on offensively when he wants to.
And going back home to Phoenix, of course, will help. That crowd's been amazing. And I understand folks are going to say, well, listen, it's an unfair fight. The Clippers don't have Kawhi. Well, the Suns didn't have Chris Paul for the first 2 games, and they haven't really had him the last 2 games. I don't know if it's getting over the rust, getting over the COVID protocols, what it is, but the 2 worst playoff games Chris Paul has had this year, aside from the one where he hurt his shoulder, are these 2 games right now, and the Suns still have the 3-1 series lead. And so I do think the series is over. I also think that a quiet subplot of the Western Conference playoffs has been the regular season might just matter again. Because one of the reasons why the Clippers are in the position they're in? Because they are totally and without question out of gas. Because their road to the conference finals was an arduous, damn near impossible one. You're the 4 seed. You take on a team with a top 3 player in basketball in Luka in round 1. They take you to the brink. Then you get Utah in round 2, which while once you made adjustments, you took care of them easily. But those first 2 games in Utah, where Utah had been the best home team in basketball all year, you're down 0-2, and now all of a sudden you're in a spot where, as I talked about last week, it's just going to continue. You're now playing your 17th game in 34 days, then your 18th game in 36 days, and eventually you look like the Clippers looked in that fourth quarter. Wild, I think it's 10. I think it was 10 shots the Clippers had in the fourth to tie or take the lead and went 0 for 10. It wasn't just Paul George going 5 for 20. He was 1 for 7 in the fourth. It was the Clippers as a whole being spent because the Suns were there for the taking. Booker wasn't playing great. Chris Paul wasn't good in the fourth quarter. All they could rely on seemingly was Ayton, and their offense isn't really built around dumping the ball to him down the low post and having him do work. He's more lobs and putbacks. And so the Clippers could have tied this series, and they didn't have enough left in the tank. So, listen, I think the Suns are an excellent team. I said before the playoffs began, I thought they were the second best team in the West. I thought the Lakers would beat them. I was obviously wrong. But I don't think the Clippers have enough in the tank to win 3 consecutive games over a team as good as the Suns are.
So you're talking a lot about them being physically spent. I think there's an emotional sort of like out of gas too. I think they're emotionally spent too, considering they had to always win on the road in Dallas, and then even the monster comeback against the Jazz. I just felt like it took a lot out of them. And if they lose tonight, oddly, it feels like, hey, we did pretty well. We beat the Mavs, we beat the Jazz, but like, oh, you didn't. But those were such an arduous climb. I think there's a feeling of almost accomplishment, and it's just like an emotional expenditure that hurts them. But, Nick, I want to throw it back to you here. 2 legacies on the line tonight. If Chris Paul goes to the finals, this will be another great chapter in his legacy, and he can finally get over the hump. I think this is also a low-key Paul George legacy game. where it's been sort of up and down. I was like, he played well, and it's like, yeah, shake the way off, Pete, you know, moniker, throw that in the garbage. Then the other day it was terrible, but the whole game was terrible, so we'll maybe give him a pass on that. I would like to see him go out, if the Clippers are going to lose, in just a blaze of glory. I don't know if it's going to happen, and I don't know if it's going to insulate you to any criticism, considering we just saw KD score 48 points and lose the game by a toenail and still get ripped. But either way, I think Paul George should just play confidently. It's a storyline that I'm just done with, that Paul George doesn't show up in the playoffs. I'm rooting for Chris Paul to make it to the finals, but I find myself oddly really pulling for for Paul George. I just want to see him play well and perform at this level of playoff basketball. I don't know why necessarily. I don't love Paul George, but it's a storyline that I feel like he's being treated unfairly, and I want to see him shake it. Do you feel that in your gut
I think for the
at
most
all?
part he shed it. I think for the most part he shed it when Kawhi went out and they won those back-to-back games against Utah. I think when that happened, people were like, okay. Like particularly that game 5 in Utah, people were like, wow. And then game 6, obviously, they come back from 25 down. Now, that was more Terrence Mann and Reggie Jackson. But this series, listen, Paul George shooting 35.5% this series. It's been rough for him. He's getting to the free throw line. He's getting rebounds. He's playing a ton of minutes, but his efficiency hasn't been there. But Brandon, I want to switch it back. And I agree with you, of course, for Chris Paul. He's the most decorated player in league history to never make a finals. Most All-Stars, most All-NBAs, and that's going to go away in the next either 12 or 36 hours. But I want to talk about the Suns as a whole, because I do think this playoffs is crystallizing for us something that we had not been saying all year. I want to go back to your Nets.
Right.
What you were saying about the Nets all year, and you weren't wrong on, was they were the only team in the league with a big 3. And I am not comparing KD, Harden, Kyrie to Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. But Ayton, this playoffs, is averaging 16 and 11 on 70%. Just for context, no player in league history in this many playoff games has averaged 15 points on better than 62%. 70%. In this many playoff games, this many points is totally off the board, unprecedented. And the fact that you can have a game like Game 4 where Chris Paul's not efficient, where Devin Booker clearly is not totally right, I think the mask was really bothering him, and DeAndre Ayton can damn near give you 20 and 20 with a handful of blocks, speaks to how malleable and how dangerous this Suns team is, because they all of a sudden have a budding big 3 that I at least didn't see coming heading into the year.
Right, and when we talk about big 3, you got to look at consistency. That's what you expect. Like, we expect James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant to perform at a high level every single night. So if you want to be considered a part of the big 3, even a part of the big 2, that means you can't take a night off. And when you look at these 3, talking about the Suns, Ayton, Booker, and CP3, throughout these playoffs, they stood up, and even the double down on Ayton, like the points, the rebounds, and the percentage. Like, we haven't seen that since 2012 with Dwight Howard. This dude is playing lights out, and those are the only 2 to do it at that level. And you go back into history, Mr. Archivist and the show historian. Like, this is a big deal, and that all starts with CP3. We saw that in the last block. We played the video of Ayton talking about CP3 is the best thing that happened for me. But if you go back to the first series with the Lakers, after that series, Bridges spoke and he said, man, I don't like how he talks to me, but at the end of the day, he is the reason why I'm playing the way I'm playing, and he's pushing me, and I have to respect it. You said it, man. It's something about this generation of CP3. I don't know if it's because they look at him as like an elder in the locker room, where it's almost like, don't disrespect your elder, I gotta listen. But he is getting through to these guys 100%.
By the way, when Bridges said that, he had Ayton on his T-shirt, so it's just an effort to confuse everybody. Time to hand out Knicks NBA medals. Devin Booker dropped 25 on Saturday, helping the Suns to a 3-1 series lead. It was not enough for a medal, not by Nick Wright standards. Nick, who made the weekend podium?
No, this is a pretty easy podium. Bronze medal Giannis, silver medal or gold medal for post-game quotes, but bronze medal for the actual game. 33, 11, and 4. And just seemed to really get whatever he wanted against this banged-up Hawks team. Okongwu did a decent job on him for spurts, but Giannis did what he wanted. Another 30 and 10 game for Giannis, his 9th of the playoffs. Silver medal, the man we were just talking about, DeAndre Ayton. 19, 22, 4 blocks. And keep in mind, they only scored 84 points. That, by the way, is the fewest points any team has scored in a win. Not all playoffs, all season. So 19 of 84 is actually like a 30-point game in a regular scoring game. Ayton was spectacular on both ends. He gets the silver. But, of course, the gold, Chris Middleton. He damn near could have gotten the gold just for the fourth quarter last night. Ties a playoff career high with 38, adds 11 rebounds, 7 assists, and in the fourth quarter, 8 of 13 with 20, outscoring the Hawks all by himself. It went from Atlanta being up 7 in the fourth to the Bucks covering the 5. Thank you, Bucks, with ease. So there you go. Chris Middleton, Brandon, gets the gold last night for over the weekend in the NBA.
Yeah, I felt like the Nets should have been on this board. They should have been sitting there with the bronze.
I can't.
Always try to use this as an opportunity to report back to you guys. Yeah, but Kyrie Irving's ankle, it's better. And James Harden's hamstring is better. So I felt like their recovery should have been a part of this conversation.
Kevin Durant's Twitter thumbs are in the best shape they've ever been. They're in the best shape they've ever been.
Most improvement. All right, Kevin Wilds, besides the Nets and their injuries, who just missed the cut?
Okay, you hear a lot of Cancun on 3 or gone fishing when players are eliminated from the playoffs. Not Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard's like, eliminate me? I'll go to your game 3. So, look, we don't see a lot of it. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy go to a game against the team that just eliminated him. He's an Atlanta guy. I get it. And you know what? Likes basketball. So I think it's a great look for Dwight. I loved it. I know there's some criticism to it. They go, oh, you got to sit at home and stew. Like, no, why not? It's good seats. Brandon told us that those seats cost $10,000. So I liked it.
What's wrong, Nick?
Why? It's great.
I don't love it.
I love basketball.
Brandon, you don't love it
State Farm Arena, you tried to charge me $10,000. 55, well, it was actually $5,500 a seat. Did you guys gift these to Dwight? Let me know, please.
No,
I don't like this, though. He should have stayed home.
Dwight's got it. Yep,
speaking of Trae, is his ankle injury the end? Well, you weren't speaking of Trae, but you saw him. Is that ankle injury the end of the Hawks' Cinderella run? First things first. First things first. We are back with Chris Broussard. Broussard, let's talk some Western Conference Finals. Clippers suddenly find themselves in another 3-1 hole after losing at home on Saturday to Phoenix. Paul George with 23 and 16. But once again, struggling from the field, shooting, 5 for 20, 1 for 9 from deep. Broussard, how much of the Game 4 loss do you put on Paul George?
Well, not as much as the Game 2 loss, obviously, when he missed those 2 free throws with 8 seconds to play that probably would have sealed the game. But, look, it's hard to totally kill him. He had 23 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists, and they don't even have a chance to win without the way he played, all right, without him putting up those types of numbers. So, in a sense, Paul George is really just showing us and validating that he is who we thought he was. He's a second star at best on the championship team. And if he's your best player, which he is right now without Kawhi Leonard, then there's a cap on how far you'll go. And that cap is the conference finals, whatever conference he's in. That's just the level of player that he is. But then there's something else that's going on that does diminish him. And that is the poor foul shooting at the end of the game. I mean, this is a guy that's an 85% career foul shooter. I mentioned the 2 he missed in Game 2 at the end of the game. But last night, or this weekend, he misses 2 free throws with 6 seconds to play that could have pulled the game within 1 point. And then later, he misses another free throw out of a pair. So he missed 3 of 4 foul shots in the last 6 seconds. A guy that shoots free throws that well, it tells you it's in his mind that the pressure gets to him. So in that sense, we felt that all along, but now it's being proven, because when you go to the foul line and you're a great free throw shooter and you become poor in the biggest moments, that clearly is mental. So,
nerves.
Like I said, he is what we thought he was. And I, you know, a 4-point game, you missed 3 free throws in the last 6 seconds. I'm putting the lion's share on you, because if you won that game as the star, you would get the lion's share of the credit.
Yeah, Nick, I'm going to throw it to you quickly. I just wanted to jump in here to talk about the free throws while Brew is on this. You know, if you go back to game 2 and those pair of free throws that he missed down the stretch that probably cost them the game, what did you see? After the first free throw, he changed his routine. He changed his approach. We know, for me, when I was shooting, I know nobody cares. I used to do 1, 2, 3, spin the ball, then shoot. And then after, slap hands, teammates, get right back to the line. The game is on the line. You never show weakness. You never break your focus. You never break your concentration. After that first one, what did he see? You saw him go like this. And when he did that and he showed the stress and he leaned into, oh, that was a big shot that I just missed, then that's why he missed the second one. And that's what you're talking about, Chris, is that struggle and seeing him embrace this stress. And he needs to do the opposite and just stay focused no matter the outcome. You're seeing Giannis embrace it. You know, don't get too high, don't get too low. So Nick, I just wanted to jump in there talking about the free throw, because you can visibly see it in game 2.
And to be fair, in game 4, one of those was intentionally missed. But obviously, the point still holds. And the fact of the matter is this. I think Paul George has played, this is going to sound patronizing, his heart out, but he has also been crazy inefficient. So a few numbers to throw at you. That in game 4, he shot 25% from the field. That was his 11th career playoff game, taking at least 15 shots, shooting 25% or worse from the field. In modern basketball, no one else has more than 7. He's got 11. Everyone else, you got to go back to like Bob Cousy, who couldn't dribble with his head up. He had like 12.5, but it doesn't matter. In modern basketball, no one has more than 7, and he has 11 of them. In this series, he is shooting a shade under 36% from the field. In conference finals history since the merger, the list of guys in a conference finals to take as many shots as Paul George and shoot as poorly is the following. Meta World Peace did it once. AI in 01 when he's the only guy on the team taking shots. Larry Bird in 88 when his back had gone out. And then D. Rose with LeBron guarding him and Paul Pierce with LeBron guarding him. That's it. Everyone has an excuse kind of there, or a reason that you would understand it, except for Paul George, who's shooting 35.5% this series. With all that said, Wilds, I don't think he's played poorly. I understand the argument that, like, man, the Clippers were 0 for 12 in the fourth quarter of this game on shots with the chance to tie or take the lead. For the series, by the way, in the fourth quarter, they're 3 for 22 on shots to tie or take the lead. That's brutal. And a lot of that falls on your best player, who right now is Paul George. But he's not supposed to be their best player. The Suns are healthier.
That's right.
And I think the Suns are clearly more rested. So I don't think this playoff run or this playoff series like makes him look worse in light of last year. I actually think it makes him look better, even though the raw numbers are pretty brutal from an efficiency standpoint.
Well, also, don't you think, Broussard, that he's forcing shots, that he knows he's the #1 offensive option, and he's probably taking shots that he wouldn't take otherwise, and that hurts his efficiency? He's not a scorer like Durant, who can just rise up over every player in the league and, like, drain a bucket. Right. He's forcing shots. He's forcing the offense because he has to carry more of his load. So, if anything, I thought that you were a little unfair, being like, this is a ceiling if he's your best guy. Like, all right, kind of, but he's supposed to have someone there. It's not like this team is built around Paul George's strength. He's supposed to be the Robin. So I don't know if it's totally fair. Like, all right, you assume the Batman role and carry us. Like, yeah, he's going to be less efficient. So I still like Paul George. I know this sounds weird. I like Indiana Pacers Paul George. I think I like him being his own guy and building a little team around him. Look, and maybe there's a ceiling to that too. Maybe he can't carry a team all by himself. But I just think it's an unfair sort of critique of the guy when it's like, all right, you're the Robin, now you have to be the Batman. Oh, you're not efficient anymore as a Batman. Like, yeah, I don't have the pieces around me.
So, and it also, though, but that is, what is fair to say is that there is a line of demarcation between the guys who can be the best guy on a team and the team still compete at the highest levels, and a guy who can't. But I got a question for Broussard to kind of tie the themes of the whole show together. And this isn't a trick question. It's just something I've been thinking about, and our great statistician, Dusty, texted to me. I was like, oh, I was thinking of the same thing. Who would you rather have as your number 2? Chris Middleton or Paul George?
Ooh. It's not a bad question. I knew that was coming. I would say Paul George, because we hold Paul George. Chris Middleton has, Wilds mentioned it last segment, 15 points he averaged in the first 2 games or something like that. Like, he does this. He is inconsistent. Look at his playoff run this year. He is inconsistent, but we don't make a big deal out of it because he's Chris Middleton. We don't expect that much. He's made 2 All-Star games.
Right.
He was was he a second round draft pick? Paul George is a perennial All-Star, and I think he's got a chance to be a Hall of Famer. I think he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer, so we do hold him to a higher standard, but that's because I think he's better than Middleton. Now, you're right. Middleton, when he gets hot, could George have done what Middleton did last night? Maybe not as often as Middleton's done it, because he does it here and there. But defensively, he gives you more than Middleton. He obviously is a better playmaker than Middleton. He rebounds better than Middleton. He's averaging almost 10 rebounds a game this series. So, no, I think Paul George is better than Chris Middleton. And I agree with what you said, Nick, about to Wilds. I don't think it's unfair, Wilds, to say there's a cap on how far you'll go if he's your best player. There is. You're not going past the conference finals, and that's good. That's not an insult. He's still a really good player. Most players can't even say that. But he's not leading a team to the championship or to the finals.
All right, that's the Clippers side of things. Let's talk about the Suns. You might be surprised about something DeAndre Ayton had to say and what he was wearing when he said it. Ooh, fashion and content on the other side. This is First Things First. Got plans tonight? How about these? Only on FS1, the biggest soccer tournament of the year, wrapping up its group play. Bolivia battles Lionel Messi in Argentina. It all kicks off 7 Eastern on FS1 and the Fox Sports app. Time now for Kevin Wilde's Weird and Wonderful from the National Pastime and Clayton Kershaw. Oh,
here we go.
He was good last night. 13 strikeouts in a 7-1 win over the Cubs. That's how you do it. But Kevin Wildes, what do you have that's even more weird and wonderful for us today?
Oh, Friday, we're going to go to the Mexican Baseball League, Jenna. Mariachis versus the Railroaders. Nomar Valdez gets the ball to shortstop. A little chaos at the plate. Oh, he's out.
Did he get him?
Wrong! Safe. Avoids the tag. Play was reviewed and upheld. Mariachis scored 7 runs that inning and win the game. Well, he thought he got him. Maybe he got him on the uniform. It doesn't count. Either way, safe. Slick play. It happens. Hey, Pirates, Cardinals. Molina, ground ball third. Key Brian Hayes, play of the year. Just a wonderful play. Nothing crazy happening here. Great. Oh, Molina's mad. You know what? Step faster. Sorry, I got to say it. Someone's got to say it. Great throw, but you got to be a step faster. And finally, moving on to the weird. Angels, Rays, top of third. Fletcher with a pop-up, fielded by second baseman Brandon Lau. And Lau's like, ooh, I'm going to make a great play here. I'm going to make a great play. It is a great play. You're like, what? That crazy throw? Yeah, you know what? It's called misdirection, fellas. Yarbrough grabs the ball. They get it to Taylor Ward at home, and he's
Never
out.
saw Fitzmagic
great play.
make
Rays
a
end
throw
up
like
losing
that.
the game, but still.
Always dropping dime.
It's the anchor of the Weird and Wonderful segment, and that's the Weird and Wonderful from the National Pastime, Jenna.
All right, back here with Chris Broussard. Talking the Western Conference Finals. Clippers suddenly find themselves down 3-1, likely without Kawhi for at least Game 5 tonight, if not the rest of the series. So on Friday, our guy Skip Bayless says he's been hearing Kawhi is unhappy with the team's medical staff. We've already seen how this played out in San Antonio. A big fat not very well. So Chris Broussard, what do you make of the latest surrounding Kawhi and how it may impact the future he has with the Clippers?
Well, Jenna, if that's true, it's certainly something to be concerned about if you're the Clippers, because as you said, we saw what happened in San Antonio. And also you wonder, Skip said that Kawhi was bothered that he felt they misdiagnosed and underplayed the extent of the knee injury. You wonder if he also is feeling like, well, they kind of pushed me to play in back-to-backs this year. I had my own pattern, and I was fine in the postseason, but they pushed me to play in back-to-backs, and now look at this. I get injured. So you wonder, is that in the back of his mind as well? I think a couple things we need to remember, though. He does have his own medical guys and trainers that he consults and works with, too. And we know that Steve Ballmer, the owner of the Clippers, will spare no expense for his basketball team. So it would be hard for me to imagine that the Clippers have a subpar medical staff. Now, Skip also said that Kawhi was going to need surgery in the offseason. If that's the case, I think that helps the Clippers' chances of keeping him, because they're going to have more confidence in him being able to come back as Kawhi Leonard than probably any other team. This isn't Kevin Durant with the Achilles, in my view. Kawhi's had a long history of injuries. He's had, issues with load management in the knee and things like that. So I think if he does need surgery, other teams, they'll still want him, but they may be a little more wary of what he'll look like when he comes back than the Clippers would. So, look, let's get to the crux of the matter. Could he leave this offseason? Possibly. Miami, I don't know. But if I'm Kawhi Leonard, there's no reason whatsoever to leave. You're at home in Southern California. You're playing for a legitimate championship contender. They're proving that while you're out right now. Yep. You've got one of the top coaches in the league, and you've got an owner that will spend money to get a championship. So what else do you need? If you really have issues with the training staff, then go to Steve Ballmer and talk to him and say, hey, just share your concerns. I'm sure he'll work with you to do what you need to keep you in L.A.
Right. And look, this is no news right here. Actually, this is universal across all sports. Probably 80 to 85% of most pro athletes have a problem with the medical staff, because the medical staff, they get paid by the team and the owner. They don't get paid by you. So what are they doing? They're always protecting their interests. I was actually just talking to a former NFL player, and he was telling me his story with a particular team and how, how they marked his injuries. They were actually setting up their workers' comp case. They're like, man, I had an Achilles injury, but they start covering it as a foot injury, because if it's an Achilles injury, now when you go to workers' comp, they got to deal with the whole leg. And so the money around that goes from potentially a $50,000 payout to a $300,000 payout. And they had to go to court with this, and the player ended up winning. So this is universal. And here's the deal. Like you brought up Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer, this is what's happening right now if these reports are true. Everyone in that organization, including Steve Ballmer, running to Kawhi, they're going from the Claw and calling him Kawhi or whatever nickname they have for him. They're saying, Mr. Leonard, what do we need to do? Tell us what we need to do. You just saw on the other side of town with the Lakers, they fired their guy. You're talking about AD having the same issues going back to the bubbles, and we can't get this guy better? All right, bye. And that's the way to do it. And you see this with other teams. Now, the problem, Nick, is some of these teams, they have these people in these medical positions that have been there for 20, 25, 30 years. And medical and the science and technology is getting better, and they're still stuck in the 80s. So they need to figure it out across the board, because this is a universal problem.
So I hear you, and I do understand, particularly in the NFL, there does seem to be an adversarial relationship quite often between player and team medical staff. That exists less so in the NBA. And usually it's because the guys are actually, their incentives are typically aligned, which is both parties want to get back on the court as soon as possible, and both parties don't want to risk long-term health, particularly for a guy like Kawhi, who is the franchise player, who the Clippers do expect and hope and believe is going to be there for the remainder of his career, or at least another 4-year max contract. So usually guys are on the same page, not always, but usually. But we can't disregard the history here, Wilds. And the history here is a player who we've seen this story before, right? Like, this is what caused the fallout in San Antonio. And San Antonio was a place where everyone adored Pop and the Spurs organization. And then Kawhi essentially missed an entire season that, if you remember those Greg Popovich press conferences, he seemed perplexed. He was like, I don't know. At this point, I guess Kawhi's not coming back. And I feel like this entire, he's out with a knee, it's a sprain. I hear it's an ACL. It's not. Is he traveling with the team? No. Is he at the game? Yes, but he's in the box. And now that it's, that ostensibly his people are talking to Skip, I mean, we know who Kawhi's circle is. It's just an odd way that this is being handled. And the only thing that's not odd about it is it feels like we saw this exact same story, just with slightly different, nouns, play out in San Antonio. And so I think Kawhi's a handful. I think Kawhi, as quiet as he is a lot to deal with inside the building as far as managing what he wants, and is he even communicating exactly what he wants. And to the point, Brandon was making, he does have them where the Clippers have no leverage. If he walks, Wilds, they're screwed. They have no draft capital. They have no salary cap. They'd have some room if he walked, obviously. But they have to have him back, and they seem like they are totally, just dead to whatever you want. And I don't know if anybody knows what Kawhi wants. And obviously, he's the only one who knows how he feels.
Yeah, I mean, he plays everything close to the vest. And I agree with Broussard. I don't think he wants to go anywhere. I think he's pretty happy in LA, to be honest with you. This is the first sort of friction that we've heard outside of sort of last year's calamities, where he had his own locker room and things like that. But overall, this hasn't been a drama-filled tenure for Kawhi. Here's the thing, Brandon. I'm okay with all of it. I think the joke is on the media if there's any hand-wringing over, like, Kawhi cares more about his health than maybe, the average fan does about theirs. Like, if I was on the Clippers, I'd be out there every day. Like, no, you wouldn't. You just wouldn't. So I'm totally fine with, honestly, Kawhi Leonard treating his career and his workload more akin to a starting pitcher. And I know he was the face of load management, and that became a bad word. It's just poor marketing. Like, no one's making Clayton Kershaw pitch on 3 days rest. And be like, oh, Kershaw won't pitch on 3 days rest, load management. Does he even care about winning? Like, it's like, yeah, because we've all accepted in baseball that there's a certain limit to how much guys can play. And it's not every guy. I understand LeBron can play for 120 games every year and play in the Olympics and keep going and going and going. Not every guy's like that, and I don't think it's fair to be like, Kawhi's not built like that. So be it. The guy wants to win. I think it's unfair to question it. He's going to conduct his career and workload different from everybody else, and that's fine.
Right. Yeah, Kawhi, I just can't imagine him even thinking about leaving. You've won league MVP, you've won NBA, the Finals MVP, you won 2 championships. What else is there left for you to do? You're back home. You bought an amazing house on the beach. When you get to a point as a player where it's like, you know what? Now it's about balance. Now it's about trying to have everything. And look, this whole injury thing and medical staff, it's a conflict of interest. We're talking about, you know, $1 billion industry with multi-million-dollar athletes. That's why you see the LeBron Jameses of the world and the Kawhi Leonards of the world, the Tom Brady's of the world have their own medical team, their own trainers. Russell Wilson has his own team. It's a conflict of interest. We're talking about guys like it's hard for me to articulate and go deep into it because it will take 30 minutes. But you're talking about guys that come into that athletic training room and their focus is, I wish we had more time because I'm super passionate about it, but the medical staff is being paid by the owner. So they're doing everything
to get back on the field
in the interest of the owner and the player. It's just a totally different approach. So it's a conflict of interest from the beginning.
I think that's right, but Broussard, I think the other factor of this is Wildes' point is well taken, but we don't have to hold Kawhi to the LeBron standard. If LeBron is on one end of the spectrum as far as health, durability, and can you rely on him at the end of the season, no matter what the workload was, this year notwithstanding, then when you're talking about the Clippers' ability to win a championship, Broussard, we do have to bake into it that Kawhi's on the other end of that spectrum. And one of the reasons the Clippers are so out of gas is because they were the 4 seed. And they had a brutal round 1 series and then a brutal round 2 series. And I think when you're, and I'm trying to help you out here, Mr. Clipper, when you're making your picks for next year, you're going to have to, even if Kawhi's there, factor in, well, how good of a regular season will they have if they have to load manage Kawhi at a higher level than any other player in the league outside of maybe Kyrie? So that is part of this, too, is that this is now, over the last 4 years, we've seen that Kawhi's, as you put it, he's like an old 29, and he was an old 26. And how much is that going to impact his ability to make it to the end of the season when they are playing every other day and they do need you for 40, 42, 44 minutes a night?
No, and here's something else to factor in, Nick. This could all be a negotiating ploy, too. Look, we know the money's not an issue. He's getting the max contract. But could this be about, well, look, he's unhappy. You better give him a no-trade clause. You better give him those extra perks that we wanted in the beginning that he got last year, but not this year. He may not practice as much. We want that, stipulated. So this could be negotiated. So, and then to your point, Nick, what if they go back to last year and Kawhi's not practicing as much and he's not as much a part of the team, but the Clippers have to agree to that verbally to keep him? Then you got a problem. Look, and I love Kawhi. You guys know he's a great player. But
what's the problem?
If I'm the Clippers and I sign Kawhi, it's not out of the question that I sign him, and at some point, I may look to move him because he is very high maintenance. But I got to get him signed because if I move him, I'm getting a ton back. But he's very high maintenance.
Yeah, I was asking what that problem was because you go back to last year. All right, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish up, Brandon.
They didn't have chemistry last year because they didn't, the practices.
You had a veteran
and sitting out games and things like that. And they underachieved.
Right. And what it was is you had Lemon Pepper Lou, and you also had the other guys in there that was pushing back on it. And it's when you have a superstar, no matter what sport, no matter what team, the standard is the standard, that whatever was set by the superstars and the coaches. So that was the problem. So if they agree to it and bring guys in and say, look, we got Kawhi Leonard, and he will be on his load management structure, and he will miss practices, then it won't disrupt the chemistry and continuity. But back last year, they had guys that didn't agree to it. That was the problem in my eyes.
All right, sit that there. Back to the story out east. The Hawks lost more than just the game in this one. It's Trae Young's ankle injury, the end of the Hawks' Cinderella run. First things first, back after this. Hey, how about this, July 13th? You got Judge, you got Tatis, you got Ohtani, you got baseball's finest facing off in a mile-high midsummer slugfest from Coors Field in Denver. It's the 2021 Baseball All-Star Game presented by MasterCard, July 13th, only on Fox. Time for stories to start your morning. Sponsored by Ram Trucks, built to serve. Eastern Conference Finals, Game 3 last night. Remember, Bucks blew out the Hawks Friday in Game 2. So how do they respond? How does Atlanta respond? Well, out of the gate strong, but not quite strong enough. Not when Giannis gives you 33. Not when Chris Middleton adds 38. Middleton outscoring the entire Hawks team in the fourth quarter alone with his 20 points. Giannis called his night absolutely unreal. That guy. Bucks win. They take a 2-1 series lead. But for the Hawks, a little injury to insult. Trae Young spraining his ankle in the third quarter when he stepped on an official's foot. He'll have an MRI later today. Also an MRI he'll have. But it clearly bothered him last night. Take a listen.
He'll have both, Jenna.
It's sore right now. It's hurting. It's frustrating. Yeah, I mean, it's hurting a little bit, and it's sore. I got some treatment on it. I'm gonna go get some more in the morning. Yeah, I mean, that's all I can do right now is to get treatment. And then, yeah, when I came back in, it was just kind of sore, and I maybe mad I couldn't really go as fast as I wanted to. And then when I did, it hurt. So just gotta get treatment, and hopefully it feels better for next game.
All right, Nick, what do you think is the bigger storyline here? The Bucks' back-to-back wins or Trae's ankle injury?
I think the bigger storyline's the Bucks. I think even if Trae hadn't hurt his ankle, the Bucks were going to win last night. And there's one way to look at this series and say the Bucks are one bad 3-minute stretch in the fourth quarter of Game 1 away from being up 3-0. And the reason they're in this position and they're going to make the finals and they're probably going to win this series in 5 is because their best player is in such a great spot, not only physically, but mentally. So Giannis had another 30 and 10 last night. It's his 9th of the playoffs, only in the modern era. Akeem, Shaq, and I'm leaving one guy. Oh, Kareem have done that. They all won the titles those years. But what was more important last night was not the points Giannis scored. It's the points he didn't score because Chris Middleton was cooking in the fourth quarter. And after the game, he was asked about that. And we can show the quote right here. And Giannis said, I want to be a winner. I have the whole game to be the guy. I don't care about being the guy in the fourth quarter. I trust Chris to death. If Chris asks for the ball, better give him the ball. And Brandon, when you see Giannis have that mindset, when you see him relentlessly attacking the basket without fear of being fouled, even though by my count, he has airballed 6 free throws these playoffs, and him joking about it with PJ Tucker in shoot-around, saying, hey, might airball 2 in a row. Don't care. Gonna keep going. I just think the Bucks are in such a great spot. And I'm going to keep going back to Giannis's quote from right before the playoffs when he was asked, hey, how can you guarantee this year will be different? He was like, I'll tell you, I can't guarantee it. What I do know is my highs won't be too high. My lows won't be too low. I'll stay even keeled. And I just think he is in such a great spot between the ears. The physical talent's never been a question. And the holes in his game, Middleton fills them in so well. Right now, they look like not only the clear-cut favorites in the East, but at least the slight championship favorites over Phoenix.
That's everything. You can't hang from the rafters when you have a big game or your team is in good position and then hang your head when you're on the other end of the spectrum. And that's the balance that Giannis has brought to this team. You know, look, when you look at this question, bigger storyline here, you got to go with the Bucks. And I agree with you here, Nick. You know, when most people are going to look at that game and they're going to say, well, it was 40 seconds to go in the third quarter when Trae rolled his ankle. They were up by 3, and he had 32 points. Well, go back and see that run that started right before that. Chris Middleton was on absolute fire. And this is a dude who struggled on the road, but not last night. This dude took his game to a whole nother level. He was in full control. Giannis, he makes it look too easy. An easy 30, an easy 10, night after night after night. So outside looking in, if you really wasn't watching the game, you're going to say, well, if Trae stayed healthy and if he stayed, you know, in that moment, they would have probably won the game. But no. Chris Middleton took it to a whole nother level. The dude couldn't miss anything. So, Wilds, the bigger storyline is the Bucks.
Yeah, I think the bigger storyline is the Bucks too. The other big storyline here is I'm personally out on ankles. They are a poorly designed part of the body, and I'm upset at the grand creator for making them so poor. We saw LeBron's ankle go. We saw Donovan's ankle go. We saw Mike Conley's ankle go. We saw Kyrie's ankle go. And now we see Trae's ankle.
Right.
So it's like it's been annoying that this injury has cost us so many great players. I'm happy for Chris Middleton finally breaking out of his funk. When he shoots over 40%, the Bucks are undefeated. We need to see that. If you're a Bucks fan, he went 15 first game, 15 second game. That's not going to get it done. If the Bucks really have another superstar, we need to see him show up on a consistent basis, Jenna, and that's what he did yesterday.
All right, time for a little take your pick as we head out the door. Clippers Suns game 5 tonight. Phoenix trying to close out the series at home. And no Kawhi again for LA. Brandon, who wins game 5?
You got to go with the Suns, and you got to start with CP3. CP3, we know the struggles he's had in the playoffs. He's finally gotten over the hump. I feel like this is going to be a statement game for him. I feel like this is a game where he's going to turn on that offensive switch where you're going to see 35, damn near 40 points, because this is an elimination game. So the Suns wins this and advance to the finals.
Wow. So here's the thing. I am rooting for Paul George to have a big game just because I feel like there's too much negativity in the air around his performance. So I am hoping, oddly, for a Kevin Durant-esque huge performance that he eventually loses. My heart is still with CP3.
Oh.
And Nick, here's the other big storyline we're not talking about. If the Suns win this one, they get a decent amount of rest before the beginning of the finals. So Chris Paul can get back in the groove. Devin Booker can feel a little bit healthier, and it's just good for the wear and tear on everybody, campaign included. So I think this is a big win for the Suns. I think they pull it out.
Well, a couple of things we're not talking about. Tomorrow's headlines today, because I think the Suns are going to win tonight. All of a sudden, Wilds guy and great Syracuse champion Carmelo Anthony might become the greatest player ever to never play in a finals. Right now, that's Chris Paul. Melo might take that title whether he wants it or not. The other thing is this. There is a little justice.
Go back to Brooklyn.
Chris Paul has had multiple years of his career where injuries to him or a teammate cut out his chance to win the title or get to the finals. This year, the Lakers get hurt. The Suns beat them. The Suns don't have Jamal. The Suns beat them. The Clippers don't have Kawhi. The Suns beat them. Finally, the injury luck might be breaking in Chris Paul's favor as he makes an NBA Finals, and I think he'll do that tonight, Jenna.